You on Sahara TV once again, sir. In your analysis, how do you assess the economic policies that are being implemented by the current president, President Tinubu, with regards to the removal of subsidies, as well as the merger of the exchange rates? Do you believe that these decisions were ill considered, considering their impact on inflation and the value of the national currency, sir?
The two policies are a regurgitation of the destructive policies of the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. Hence, both Bretton Woods institutions have been lauding, praising the government for the religious implementation of the floating of the naira and the removal of first subsidies. These policies are not in the interest of Nigeria. They are not in the interest of the economy. In fact, the policies are meant to render the Nigerian economy prostrate, which is what is going on. The government is aware that it is dangerous to remove subsidies. As a matter of fact, the government did say last year that the atmosphere was not congenial for the removal of or increase in electricity tariff. This institution are insisting that the government will have to increase electricity tariffs, even though Nigerians are becoming poorer. The IMF is also insisting. Have we just discovered that the price of fuel, the pump price of fuel, has remained stagnant for the past 1 year, since July last year? So, no, since the government came up, since the removal of subsidy. Hence, the IMF is insisting now that whatever is left by way of fuel subsidy will have to be removed. The negative impact on Nigerians is meaningless to these institutions because their policy is to unleash economic pains on our people. The Bola Tinubu administration will have to be made to appreciate that Nigeria is a sovereign nation and that the government has a duty to protect the interests of the country. If you take the floating of the exchange of the naira, I've said it and I've dragged the government to court. It's illegal. Section 16 of the Central Bank Act. Central Bank Act provides that the management of the central bank shall determine the exchange rates of the naira vis-a-vis other currencies by method designed by it, of course, in the interest of the country. Nowhere is it stated in the Central Bank Act or any law in Nigeria that market forces shall determine the exchange rate of the currency. Nowhere. But what happens today is that Nigeria has over, the Central Bank has given out over 5,000 licenses to borrow the change operators. These operators now determine the exchange rate of the naira vis-a-vis other currencies, not the central bank. Even the guys who are also involved in cryptocurrency also influence the exchange rate of the naira vis-a-vis the dollar. In the so-called black market, as of today, the exchange rate is about 1,900 naira to a dollar. Pound sterling is about 2,250 naira. Now, when would the government apply? When would the government intervene in line with the provisions of the Central Bank Act?
Now,
why?
Let me just get your version. Earlier on, sir, you said that this government actually knew. It's not that they are clueless as far as...
No. It's a deliberate policy. Deliberate economic policies. The implementation of neoliberal policies. It's not an accident.
Now, we're having... Nigerians, we're talking about the negative impact it has had on Nigerians. We've seen the government, the federal government, taking some steps at this point in time, and we've seen them clamp down on these so-called BDC operators, as well as cryptocurrencies in recent time, it clamped down on Binance and access to these things. Are these measures enough, sir?
No, they won't go far. Those measures will not go far. In fact, the more circulars issued by the central bank, the higher the rates. Again, as I said, the government will have to embrace economic policies that will be in the interest of our country. The government is aware. Hence, the president says regularly, I appreciate the pains of Nigeria. Stop the pains. And you can stop the pains if you are prepared. The government can terminate the pains, economic pains of Nigerians today, if it is prepared to confront the crisis in the energy sector, the crisis in the forex market, food crisis, in the interest of the country. If there are no food items in the country, if we are experiencing food scarcity because of insecurity, that farmers can no longer access their farms, who is to blame? So the government cannot arrogantly maintain, oh, we're not going to allow importation of food. No. You have to negotiate with some neighboring countries so that you can make food available in the country. Secondly, ours is an import-oriented economy. There's no way we can benefit from the reckless devaluation of the naira through dollarization. It has never worked anywhere. And Nigerians, we've gone through this before. When the Ibrahim Babangida junta imposed the structural adjustment program on Nigerians, it was the same experience. This was how the exchange rate of the naira vis-a-vis other currencies.
Let me get your reaction.
So the point
please go ahead.
The point I'm making is that this is structural adjustment program 2, promoted by imperialism to destroy the economy of Nigeria.
The presidency recently responded to viral allegations which were said to have been made by your humble self, sir. And at a memorial event in honor of Bekoras of Kuchiri, you claimed that President Bola Tinubu's administration distributed 135 billion to 26 state governors to fight COVID-19 in December 2023. The presidency spokesperson, Temitope Ajayi, had said that your statements were reputation. You have a reputation for exaggerations and embellishments. What's your response to this, sir?
I think the guy was just throwing upwards. He didn't know what it was. With profound respect, he ended up contradicting himself. I did say that during the first week of December last year, the government disbursed 135 billion to states in connection with COVID-19 pandemic. He has said that I was exaggerating. In his own statement, he now said it was 135.4 billion naira. Right?
Yeah.
And that it was disbursed for post-COVID-19 pandemic.
Exactly.
I really don't understand what the guy was talking about. Now, the other figures I give, the disbursement of not less than 1 trillion naira per month since subsidy was removed from fuel. He never denied that. He never denied the fact that in July last year, 1.9 trillion was to have been disbursed. He never denied the fact that in December, the same month, December of 2023, 1.7 trillion was disbursed. Whereas in April 2023, before the removal of fuel subsidy, what was disbursed to the three tiers of government by FAC was 655 billion naira. All I was saying was that the government has to be held accountable. Contrary to his Mr. Temitope Ajayi spurious allegation, the president summoned a meeting of all the governors, right? And pleaded with them to spend the money and not the people. It was an admission that we owe Nigerians a duty to be accountable. That's it. I have also insisted that the basic products, gas and crude oil, be sold in naira so that we can promote our national currency. Again, I didn't say that from the blue. Some countries are trading among themselves now in their currencies. And I'm talking of the BRICS. Brazil, India, Russia, China, and South Africa. And I'm saying Nigeria is missing in that list of countries that are taking their sovereignty seriously. Section 19 of the Nigerian Constitution has imposed a duty on the government to join others to promote a new international economic order. And that is what BRICS is doing. I've also said that countries like Saudi Arabia, Egypt, United Arab Emirates, Ethiopia have joined the BRICS. Nigeria said last year, we are going to join after 2 years. I beg your pardon. Join today. In the interest of the economy of Nigeria.
Let me get
And it's actually not a new economic practice. Because in 2018, the government of Nigeria and the People's Republic of China entered into a currency swap agreement. Even though the value was $2.1 billion then, you know. The IMF and the World Bank have frustrated the central bank from implementing it. And I'm calling on the government. Since goods imported from China last year was about, the goods were valued at $22 billion. Whereas what we exported was about $1.6 billion. I'm now asking the government, since the agreement will expire in July this year, begin fresh negotiations, fresh talks with the Chinese. Because this policy now is in line with the economic program of BRICS. So the government should not give the impression that there are no alternatives to the implementation of dangerous neoliberal programs of the IMF and World Bank.
Nigerians continue to bemoan the precarious economic hardships that they're undergoing at the moment. And economists have warned of substantial political stability risk due to the high inflation and low economic growth, as well as the unpopular market reforms that has been implemented by this presidency. How do you perceive the potential impact of these factors on the country's political landscape, especially considering the administration's current trajectory, sir?
I think what is important is for Nigerians to demand accountability from the government. And when I talk of the government, I'm not talking of the federal government alone, because there's so much attention on Abuja. We must hold the state governments accountable. We must hold our local governments accountable. Whereas the federal government takes a lion's share of the revenue of the country. It's about 52%. The states and local government are allocated about 48%. So we must ask questions from each tier of government. Again, I've demanded the monthly publication of statutory allocations going to the three tiers of government, so that Nigerians are empowered, they are informed, they are enabled to ask questions.
Okay.
This was the practice in the past. But at a stage, some public officers rushed to the office of the Accountant General and bribed the officials to stop the publication.
Is that legal, sir? From a legal perspective?
Very illegal. Very illegal. We've given a notice to the office of the Accountant General. If the government fails to resume the publications, we have to go to court. Yeah.
Considering the administration's current stance and the policies, do you believe there is still room for a meaningful turnaround in Nigeria's economic and political trajectory, sir?
No, only Nigerians can make that possible. The government is already hooked to the IMF and World Bank. So only Nigerians can demand that this country be run as a sovereign nation. The government cannot willingly do it. Nigerians will have to demand that the umbilical cord between Abuja and the IMF and World Bank be terminated. And for the government, I also would like to advise the government to be armed with information when dealing with these two institutions. For instance, I expect the government to point out, as soon as the IMF insisted that fresh subsidies be removed, electricity tariff be increased, I expected the government to say, come. On the 30th of January this year, the IMF chief in London berated the British government for not investing enough in education and health. I expect the government to remind the IMF and World Bank that in 2022, the French government set aside 45 billion euros to take care of the energy crisis due to the war in Ukraine. Again, I expect the government to confront with the IMF with its own publication made last year to the fact that between 2021 and 2023, Western countries had spent $7 trillion by way of subsidies on fossil fuels. So in other words, I'm accusing these institutions of hypocrisy. And if they know the government of Nigeria is aware of such hypocrisy, I'm convinced beyond any shadow of doubt that the game will be different. But right now, the prescriptions of the IMF and World Bank are taken by our government as the gospel truth, which should not be so.
Finally, sir, what key actions or reforms, I know you've touched more on this, would you recommend to steer the country away from the path of perdition and from people taking over the streets?
The government will have to engage in productive dialogues with stakeholders in our country. The government will have to be more committed to serious negotiations with the labor movement, including the unions and the tertiary institutions. The government will have to engage in meaningful dialogue even with pensioners whose fund is being borrowed by the government. The government will have to suspend or rather cancel. The government will have to cancel the rush of increases on basic items. The government has to, through the Nigeria Customs Service, reduce import duties so that essential goods can be brought into the country and made affordable and available. And for progressive forces in our country, genuine progressive forces, the mobilization of our people will have to start in earnest. People will have to be mobilized to take their political destiny in their own hands. People will have to be mobilized to prepare for a major showdown with the IMF and World Bank and its surrogates, not just in Nigeria, but in Africa. Happily, some African countries are already beginning to take their destiny in their own hands. Just last Friday, the Egyptian government, after messing up its economy by floating its currency, the pound, has now discarded the dollar, the American dollar, discarded the American dollar. And Egypt is now prepared to trade with countries that are ready to accept its own currency. And that is what we're asking the government to do. Countries are offering to trade with Nigeria in our currency, in the Naira, and their own currencies. So why is the government not prepared to adopt policies that can end the suffering of the citizens?